Welcome to Now to Next with Jason Averbook, the space where today's changemakers and tomorrow's visionaries collide. I'm Jason Averbook, and every episode we promise to unpack the ideas, technologies, and bold moves shaping the world we're all stepping into. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Now to Next podcast. I am so excited for today's guest and so excited to be joined by Shirley Baumer. Shirley, welcome.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
I have gotten to know Shirley over the last couple weeks and have been absolutely fascinated by her background, by her both personal and professional background, as well as kind of where she's taking the world of work. And I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to highlight her on the podcast, as the goal here is to find people who are interesting, fascinating, and doing really, really cool things in the world. So excited to have you, Shirley. And I thought we'd start with just getting to know you a bit. It's fascinating to see you've gone from journalism to behavioral economics to being at Monday.com, which I hope you get to tell people about, to now where we are today in your organization. So would love for you to talk a little about the journey that you've been on and how it got you to where you are today.
So today I'm a co-founder and CPO of DreamTeam. We're an AI native people management platform. Second-time entrepreneur. Before that, almost 8 years at Monday.com. Started in the founding team. So first product manager. Grew up from 30 employees, 2,000 employees, from $6 million ARR to 1 billion. One of the most successful IPO in 2021 globally. So crazy ride. Yeah, and before that, as you mentioned, I was a journalist, and I think that everything in common is just this basic curiosity of how people are wired, and then how we can rewire some things that are not working so well.
I love that. No, I love that. I love that wired and rewire. It's a great kind of comparison and of where we are today and the things that you're focused on. You said second time entrepreneur. I'm really fascinated by entrepreneurs. If you had one word that you could use or a few words about what it's like the second time versus the first time, what would you say?
I think I failed a lot, did some great things, lots of mistakes. So, kind of more sober approach, I guess. So, optimistic still, because that's a must in an entrepreneurship journey.
But I think that word fail is really important. And a lot of people don't dig into or push on that word fail. A lot of people are afraid to fail, which in the conversations with you, first of all, moving into HR means you're kind of fearless to begin with because
Yeah,
it's a whole different space. But
definitely.
on a more serious topic, you know, I'd love for you to talk a little about where you're from and where you're joining us from today, because once again, failure and the fear, it all kind of comes together in what I would call grit, and the grit you have to survive a world that's really, really changing and in a lot of turmoil today. So maybe you could talk a little about your story and joining us from Israel.
So, joining you from Israel, not the most happy place on the planet right now. I won't dive too deep into politics because it's complex and depressing.
Well, I mean, I guess really we should say we're recording this July 24th of 2025. So, we know this changes every single day. So as
Yeah,
people listen to it, we're going to hear the July 24th, 2025 version of kind of where we're
exactly.
at today.
Yeah. It's a horrible situation, basically, and very challenging to build a business. I think the most important thing for me is kind of to acknowledge the toll it takes on civilians and on all sides, like Palestinians, Israelis, Iranian. My greatest wish right now in life, I think, is that this war will end. And I think it's interesting because we're kind of living in a world, in the TikTok area, where if something is not reflected in 3 seconds, so it's very hard to understand like nuances and complexity. And I think the situation is very, very complex. And it's very easy to divide us. I heard this TED talk, which I loved, with Aziza Busera and Mao Zinon. Both are peacemakers from Palestinian and Israeli. Both lost family members, so kind of, paid the highest price possible. And I was really connected to what they said. They said, like, people divide us to Israelis and Palestinians. But if you need to divide us all together, it will be for people who are into justice, into peace, into equality, and those who don't. And I think it's very powerful and a very short and concise way to summarize what's going on here, because the said fact is that most civilians on both parts are the first group, right? The group who believes in humanity. And the leadership, or the people in power, or the men in power in a more specific way, are on the other group, and civilians pay the price. And that's devastating.
Yeah, I think that, sorry to interrupt. I think that you know, you shared some personal stories with me that, as we were talking about this, just about your family, and what your family has gone through, but also building a company. I mean, it's hard to build a company. Someone who's done it a couple times, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to build a company, but building a company in the middle of a war, at a war where not everyone is unified in what they're fighting or even know why they're fighting necessarily. I'd love your take on that because I'm sure there's some great
Yeah,
lessons
sure.
to
I,
be learned.
I can share a quick example. I have lots. A month ago, something like that, in the middle of the night, 4 a.m., I started to hear sirens, and the war with Iran started, and like hundreds of ballistic missiles were launched towards Israel all over, like the entire country was in shelters. So kind of very immediate threat to your life and very scary. And business wise, a few hours later in the morning, 7 a.m., I talked to my partner and we said, okay, what are we going to do? And I guess the reasonable thing was to, we and our families and our employees and their families are under a very immediate threat and are going in and out of shelters. So let's pause the business. Let's stop for a while. But we didn't do that. We didn't do that. Like we said, no, we have commitment to our customers and to our investors, and we can't stop. We won't stop. So we kind of, I think, find the middle ground between being there for our employees and giving them the support they need and the flexibility they need because the situation is very, very uncommon. But we kept on pushing forward, and eventually it was 2 weeks. We didn't know back then how long it will take, but eventually
Right.
it was two weeks, which were very, very intense. We were, able to launch a new brand, a new website, new feature, close new deals, support our clients. And I can't tell you how proud I am on the team that we're able to do that.
And this is while you're going in and out of shelters. This is while you're worried about your kids who are 4 and 2. I mean,
Yeah,
this is while all this other stuff's going on.
yeah, definitely. It's insane. It's not a normal reality, but I do can tell you, what I can share is that I think like Israelis entrepreneurs and the Israeli tech scenes are the most resilient, creative, brilliant group of people I have ever worked with, despite the challenges, despite this unreal situation. And you know what? Even maybe because of that.
Yeah, no, it may make you strong. I mean, the way you said can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah.
I mean, more power to you because what an amazing, amazing statement. And, before we pivot into the HR world and the product world, I mean, I just want to say, I mean, you and your team are amazing to survive through this, and more power to you
Yeah. Thank you.
as things evolve and hopefully we get back to a peacetime situation instead of a wartime situation like we are today.
Yeah. Amen.
You know, as you think about the world and this concept of shifting from I'll call it old world to new world, which
Mm.
is probably a good way to think about what we're all feeling today, which is a little bit messy. It's government systems changing, it's educational systems changing, it's business changing. You know, what we're talking about today is just a microcosm of that, which is, HR and HR technology. But
Yeah,
I think one of the things that resonated with me the first time you and I spoke was this concept that a lot of HR technology today is kind of lipstick on old processes, lipstick on old ways of working. I don't want to call it a pig, but
yeah,
lipstick on old ways of
yeah,
working. And I think that your background at Monday.com combined with what you're doing now in the HR space really opens a whole new universe of capabilities that what you're doing with Dream Team is not, it's not been seen before. So I'd love for you to kind of talk about the philosophy that you're using to break those old school ways of thinking. Because, we've gone from DOS to client server, excuse me, DOS to Windows to client server to web in HR technology, but we're still doing the same thing,
yeah,
just in a different technology. And I think, well,
for sure.
excuse me, I don't think, I know you're breaking that mold. So maybe you can talk to that. That was a
I
lot.
think
Sorry, that
they're
was
they're
a lot of
very
me, a lot of a deep question.
yeah, a good question. I think they're very solid players in the market. But like you said, I think they were built in different times. They're kind of built in the old world and kind of perpetuate the status quo in a way. So it was like, how does an employee file looks? Let's do it on the web. Or how does performance cycles being ran? Okay, let's kind of digitize it.
Put an E in front of it. Put an E in front of it, right, Shirley, and make it
Yeah,
E performance. Instead of just performance, let's call it E performance.
exactly. And I think the interesting part, especially now that everything is changing, is like, how can I reinvent these processes? Do I even need them? Will they work the same? And our philosophy is not necessarily to dictate what the future looks like, and to build a platform like we imagine the future would work, would be like. But our philosophy is more like we give our customers the complete freedom and flexibility to build whatever they want and whatever they believe. And also, we make it super easy to change and adapt. And I think that's critical because I can share that in my experience of working um, in Monday.com, from 30 employees to 2,000 employees, we changed our HR tech stack, I think 10 times. Why? Because it didn't work anymore. Like every few months, we outgrew it. And the Monday.com product platform, I think, again, the same philosophy, like the most flexible
Yeah,
product in the
it lived
market.
through that whole period, right? Well, you changed your HR system 10 times.
Yeah, and the money.com product, the same product can use for CRM, for ticketing system, for dev tool, for project management, for lots of other things. So so it must be very, very, very flexible. And we kind of took this approach into HR. And I think that it was very important back then, like, again, for a company like ours, who was going through hyper growth. It was critical because we kept on changing all the time.
Yeah.
Not all companies in the world change all the time, but now they will, because now it's a very turbulent time, and I think it will be an era of lots of trial and error.
Wait, yeah, and I talk about this a lot, this concept of incremental change to exponential change. I know we talked about it a little, and
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to that fear and fail, kind of those two F words. As you shifted from a PM, and for those people that don't know what a PM is, I'd love for you to explain it. PM to a founder.
yeah,
I think that people that have deep expertise and understanding their user or their human that's consuming their software have huge advantages over people that just start with a business idea and run at it. I'd love your thoughts on that because that's always been my belief, if you know your customer intimately and you know what it takes to build to your customer, gives you a tremendous advantage. And I think that to go from a PM to a founder like this, and the fear that goes along with that, I'm sure that there's been a lot of positivity in knowing that you understand your customer and that you know how you've done this before as a PM, so therefore you can move this way as a founder.
Yeah. Um, yeah, first of all, like Monday.com and Dream Team, it's very much product first companies. So product is everything. Some companies are sales led, some companies are marketing led, some companies are, I don't know, PR led. Monday.com and Dream Team are product led. Everything is from the product outside. And I
How does that work? Just like when you say that, like just give us an example. So let's say we've got listeners to this that, are tennis people, and we've got people that that focus on tennis balls, or we have people that focus on glasses or healthcare. Like, what does that mean to be product led?
um, in lots of levels, but from the how much emphasis you put to customers' feedback, customers' need, customers' delight. That's the center of it all. And on top of that, that's what you sell and that's what you market and everything like that. I can give you a very tiny example
Yeah, that's great.
can affect strategy in a way. Early on in Monday.com, like very early days, we felt that when a customer, we wanted to get the most valid feedback because we were very, very obsessed with feedback. And because of that, we believe that valuable feedback is only when a company pays you. So it's not like a nice to have thing that you have on your tech stack, but actually cares enough to pay. So we decided that we won't have a freemium version.
Yep.
And for 8 or 9 years, we didn't have the freemium version because of that. It was a product decision. It affected the business. So a very small example, but a lot of examples like that. And also, the DNA, what the leadership cares about, and what everyone cares about.
Yeah, no, it's a great example of putting that at the center. And I think that by doing that, by putting it at the center, it gives you an opportunity to truly rethink the category, rethink what it stands for. And I'm curious, we talked about the concept of a people OS, people operating system, which I love, but we're surrounded by a world of point solutions. And, for as long as I've been doing this, but it's been a constant debate. Do we use something else? What do we use for our core? What do we use for recruiting? What do we use for performance? What do we use for time? Like, I'd love your thoughts on what does that people OS mean to you? And
Yeah.
then, do you see yourself as another point solution, or are you core? You're core, and you don't want, I mean, I say this, it's probably a little controversial. You don't want people using point solutions.
So Dream Team is all in one HR platform. Okay, so that means like hire to retire, everything. So onboarding, performance surveys, documents, everything. But our approach is more like OS or more like operating system. A very simple example is your phone. On your phone, you have the operating system. Some apps are already given by Apple or Android, but
Hmm.
you're also very free to work with whatever app you want. So I have, for example, a Gmail app and a Google Calendar app on my iOS device, and it works perfectly. And that's our approach in essence. So in our operating system, we give like the OS structure that can work seamlessly with other applications as well, but you can decide and you can customize it and personalize it for your own needs. So you can use whatever you need, don't use whatever you don't need. And if you choose to work with other vendor, you can. It will be on top of our work OS and work seamlessly with everything else.
Okay. No, that's really, really helpful. Shirley, don't laugh at this, but I think we've gone, 15, 20 minutes without talking about the word or letters AI, which is rare in today's world. But I think I'd be
We
remiss
did.
if I didn't talk about it because, you are, I'm going to say, privileged to build AI first, which means you've started from a platform or an operating system, or allows your operating system, excuse me, to inherit all of the capabilities of what AI brings instead of watching people trying to bolt that on. And I'd love for you to talk a little about that, to maybe share some examples of where being AI first truly is that competitive edge.
So, as you said, we had the privilege of building Dream Team from scratch as an AI native platform. And that means that conceptually, it means that we looked on the problems today and the outcomes people want to achieve. And then we didn't need to do the conventional way of solving them, but we can ask ourselves, how can we do that in the amazing, powerful technology of AI? And I can share some examples. So I think in the old world, let's go with the most basic thing when you use a new platform implementation. In the old world, implementing an HR tool for small businesses or medium businesses can take months of work. For larger
It takes, yeah,
organizations,
it's crazy. It's crazy. It could take longer and it could cost
yeah,
more to
it
implement
can
than it actually
actually
costs
cost.
to buy the
Exactly.
software.
Exactly. So it costs a fortune, and you have implementers, people who that's their only job. In Dream Team, everything you build in Dream Team, you do it with a prompt. Okay, so you can just say what do you
Just
want.
like a ChatGPT prompt.
Exactly. What are your goals? I can say I want to build a feedback talk, which is Netflix inspired because I love their culture. So it already knows you. It knows who you are and your business and your goals and everything and your industry and your size. And you can also add more context, and then it builds it for you. So it builds time away policies. If you have 20 offices around the globe, they can build it for you, baked in with local regulations and best practices, and performance reviews and surveys and employee schemes and reports and dashboards and everything. So what used to take months and cost a fortune now takes minutes, and it's really democratized. Like everyone can do it. You don't need a technical skill, and you don't need nothing. Sometimes you don't even need HR deep knowledge.
Right.
Sometimes, because in some organizations, the tiny ones, they don't even have an HR. Often, the tiny ones, and so it can be a good enough solution for the small ones.
So that concept of prompt and that concept of chatting and using your language instead of a computer language, in work, I mean, that truly is, what we call AI first instead of AI added. I
Yeah.
think is a good way to say it. One of the things I'm curious about is how do you change the mindset? How do you make sure people don't just do what they've been doing in the past in your platform, but actually really see the value of rethinking, as they're using the tool or as they're preparing to use the tool or as they're deploying it, and probably deploying it in a way where they're pushing it out to employees that haven't liked the things that they've pushed out in the past. And like now all of a sudden we're saying, hey, this is different. Like, why is it different? And what are you doing to show that it's different?
So the implementation part was just one aspect, or like building the software part, because it's kind of an ongoing thing. It's not really a one-time thing, but that's more of the admin side. But also from the employee experience side, like let's face it, like HR tasks, employees hate to do. No one likes to do that.
Come on, come on. Are
No
you
one likes
serious?
no one likes to report hours. No one likes to write performance reviews. I hated it as a manager. And I never remembered how to log in even to our HR platform, and because there are so many and they were changing all the time. And so our philosophy in this aspect is, if you can't beat them, join them. So we have also an employees facing chat where they can do everything they want. Clock in, ask time away, ask about policies, understand things about their organizations. And even we don't force them to log into Dream Team. They can do it in Slack or in Messenger, in the place they already spent time with. Okay, so our goal really in terms of the employees is to create minimum friction, and it doesn't require any training because people know how to chat.
Right. And it shouldn't require any training. I mean, I think those days are so over and dumb. that people still have to go to training classes to figure out how to use these tools. I'm so glad you said that because it's been a big pet peeve of mine for a long time.
Yeah. In my previous startup, it was in physiotherapy, so completely different world. But we help rehabilitation patients to do their exercises at home. And it was a while ago, it was 10 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
Pre AI, pre COVID, so working from home was very unusual. Like a remote health is very uncommon and stuff like that. And when we came to design the software, I personally spent hours and hours inside the hospitals observing how rehabilitation professional are working with patients, and I understood that they are really not what I imagine. Often, older people or wounded people, and their ability to use software is kind of limited in a way. And what we did back then is a chat interface,
Yep.
which was very primitive. But back then we said which software you don't need to teach. Chat. Let's do a chat interface. And then we did it back then 10 years ago. And I still believe it's true. That's the most native
Well,
human computer
it's what we're doing
interface.
here. It's what we're doing here. It's what comes the most natural to us as humans without having to learn
Exactly.
how to talk to a machine. The machine
We learned it
learns
2000
us.
years ago, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that you said as part of a little of the reading that I was doing, getting ready for this, was first of all, I love the fact that you don't talk about this as an HR tool. You talk about this as a people tool. And you talked about how a solution, I hate to even call it that, but an operating system can provide support along the way, support to a manager or coaching or guidance to a manager along the way. Now,
Mm.
most managers today, like you said, hate using HR systems. They don't get coaching. They oftentimes go there and get frustrated and then end up calling and hopefully get coaching. But maybe you can talk a little about how you're building that coaching capability, not coaching how to use a tool,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
coaching how to be a human and how to be a manager into the operating system.
When we think about what being a great leader is, it's like seeing the big picture, mastering details, be able to identify patterns, risks, opportunity, and act upon them. And that's what we're trying to do with Dream Team. So, admin is handled for you. You don't need to create time away policies. You don't need to take care of time away bureaucracy. Data is analyzed for you, and it really give you insights in a proactive way about your employees, who is at risk of leaving you, who might be burned out. So it's actually take your admin work to zero. And also, it's kind of your ears on the ground, like helping you to understand what's going on. We don't take care of like coaching in like give you tips about management. I don't think that's our place. We don't do it. Maybe in the future, I don't know.
Mhm.
But what we are doing is that we minimize administrative time for you and giving you lots of insights about your people and kind of encourage you to act upon.
So you are in a space now where trust is a huge issue.
Yeah.
You can't go a day without reading something about someone not trusting their HR system or a lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. And, one of the things I read that you said is that you're not just building systems with AI, but you're stewarding them.
Mm.
And I really liked the way that you said that. Can you talk about that? Because we have people that listen to this that are building products that are responsible for educating their organizations that we should trust tools. Can you just talk a little about the ethos of what that means by stewarding systems like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it comes with several like layers. The first part is just keeping your data secure because we're dealing with the most sensitive data.
But that should be like a no-brainer, right? Like, shouldn't that be like zero stakes to keep your data secure?
It should
Maybe it's just me being dumb, but isn't all data secure?
put extra precautions around that because we know that performance data, compensation data, Very personal data is the most sensitive thing you can imagine. So, of course, each company says their data is secure, but as a startup, often takes you time to become, bulletproof.
Yep.
And yes, we put a lot of effort around that, because we understand the importance of that. Never lost a client on trust issues.
Right. So we're secure, right? We're secure.
Fundamental layer. Above that, I think that one of the risks of using AI, or even in a more drastic way, like we approach it kind of an autopilot way, so AI actually does some of the work for you, that it can be very stressful because you're not in control and you don't understand what's going on. If I will take it to another world, like coding, for example, I think there are two edges. Like the traditional coding, you have complete control, you have complete flexibility. A software engineer can write everything he wants with code, but it takes a lot of time. The other side of the spectrum is companies like Lovable, Base 44, Bolt, that do it with prompt. And then you get minutes to buy to build functional product, which is unbelievable and it's insane.
You know,
But
Shirley, I built my first lovable app the other day.
it's
And
mind blowing.
I was actually blown away. And I just have to share with you this quick story. My kids, who are 20 and 17, they're like, "Oh my God, Dad, it's not that big of a deal." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh," as someone who used to write lines of code, whether it be in COBOL or BASIC, sorry, I'm dating myself. Like what Lovable does to me is crazy.
It's
And
crazy.
I'm not saying it's perfect. And not
Okay,
saying
and
it
what
gives you
the
perfect code.
disadvantage of that is that it's very hard to edit. It's very hard to customize it for your own
Okay.
needs. It kind of do the 80/20 for you, but it's very hard to make it perfect for you. And what is important for us is to combine. Okay, so everything you start with a prompt, everything that you do, and it's very easy, and it takes like a few seconds or a few minutes to build anything that used to be very, very complex. But also you can still, in a very simple drag and drop UI, can customize it to the extreme, okay, and
Okay.
make it perfect for your needs. So that's one aspect. And also, like everything that the AI is doing for you, it's very important to us to be transparent, to explain exactly what is being done, why, what is the reason behind it, and you can always revert it, and you can always edit it, and you can
It's
always
iterative, right? It's
yeah,
iterative.
yeah, of course. So yeah, so keeping this element of doing it for me baked with best practices from the kind of external world, but also giving me the ability to customize it to my own need and always understanding what's going on and put me in charge. And I think that's a very important principle. And the third layer is more ethical, I think, because AI is trained on a very large sets. And what it can do is it can keep the same biases that are happening today. So, for example, if I'm a female and I'm asking our chat, okay, I'm already here for 2 years, should I ask for a promotion? I don't want our AI to give a different answer than if a man asks it.
Right.
Okay. Um, so that's already becoming more nuanced and more complex, but it's definitely something that we are thinking about.
Okay. No, that's helpful. I like how you laid out those three layers. That's really, really helpful when we think about kind of the layers of, I'll just call it judgment, when it comes in judgment and trust when we think about using AI in these tools. We didn't really talk about this, but if you look at who you're building for and the size of organizations, the skills that are needed to run software, to design processes, and just to work day to day in HR. How do you see that changing? Like, I always break things down into hands work, heads work, and hearts work,
Hmm.
and I think that a lot of the hands work, I mean, especially with tools like you're describing, is going to go away so that people can do more heads work or that strategic insight work. or heart's work be closer to the employees. But if you think about this, like, first of all, what size companies do you see using your solution today? And then
Mhm.
second of all, how do you see them reskilling their functions based on the tools?
So currently, our customers are normally up to 500 employees. So from really 10 people company up to 500. So more focused on SMBs at this point.
Why do you think that? Sorry to interrupt you. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think why do you think that because we get into these bigger companies that it just becomes more complex, so all of a sudden software companies stop? Or I'm in a constant world of reset, Shirley. So for me, I'm like, why do we always do that? Why do we always do SMB large? Couldn't the large company just not be as complex? Or is that not possible? I'd love your thoughts on
Um,
that thinking.
I think we also have larger ones. Okay, I'm just talking about the majority of them.
Yeah, yeah.
I think how I look on it, we don't aim to build a SMB company or enterprise company.
Okay.
For me, as I look on it, it's a more a kind of a journey. I also really experienced it in Monday.com. When I joined, the average team size was five. Tiny, tiny, tiny teams use Monday. I was the one actually who led Monday from the small ones to enterprise clients. And now the enterprise clients, few years later, that's the main business. Like that's the main business of Monday. The big ones,
Right.
but they didn't lose the small ones, and that's often what companies do. Often companies choose sides,
I
and
love that. I haven't thought about that, but I love that. I love that.
I think that if you are it's not, it's very difficult because it's a very different company who builds products for, no touch, low touch, small companies and enterprise. But if you are able to do that, and that's hard, you gain so much because the big ones, they enjoy the simplicity, the ease of use of, consumer products, and the small ones enjoy the very robust platform that they can manage, they can use for their needs. And it's not always like how robust a platform is not always a function of size, not always, often. So for us it's a journey, and we are going there, and that's our focus. And I also think that small businesses, especially in tech, but not always, small businesses are more open for this type of innovation. Because when I say we can replace lots of the repetitive, mundane work in large organizations, some of the employees they hire right now, they do that. And in
Yep.
order to make a change, they need to think, which people do I have? Which skills do I have? Who I need to hire? What is their org change I need to do? It's very hard. But
Yeah.
if you kind of replace emptiness in a way, it's easier.
Yeah, no, I think that the concept of organizational change is what's going to continue to hold back organizations from moving as fast as they could in this space. I'm not saying they should, but as fast as they could. So AI skills, we talk about AI skills, and
Yeah,
I talk to people every day who's like, "Oh my
yeah.
God, we don't know AI, we're falling behind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Like, how much for the not for you, not for people who are building software, but for people using tools, what AI skills would you say? How big of a deal is that to have AI skills? If you had to weigh AI skills versus human skills, where would you, how would you weigh them out?
I think you should, everyone in the workplace today should focus on acquiring AI skills. And it's not so hard or intimidating as it seems,
What does that mean? Like, what
because
does that mean?
getting familiar with the relevant tools,
Okay.
getting familiar, with even stuff like prompt engineering, how to write a good prompt, how to give
It
the prompt
sounds
content.
difficult. It sounds like it needs to be a computer science person. Like, if you had to tell your 4-year-old, just get familiar with AI, like, what would you say?
Actually, it's a good example because I think it's good to explain things to AI like you explain to your 4 year old kid, because you need to be very explicit and you need to be very clear and you need to give lots of context about things.
That really is a good example. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and so yeah, getting familiar with the latest technology and tools and skills, like I said, like prompt engineering and stuff like that. But I think that not less important, because we're moving to an area where lots of the operational admin work is going to be replaced, is actually to focus on some the most distinct human skills. Okay, like strategic thinking and empathy and critical thinking. Like I can give you an example. In the beginning of the war in Israel, for a year, something like that, the GPS didn't work. They stopped working as some sort of a defense
Wow.
way of the Israeli army. Yeah. So we
Okay.
didn't have GPS. Now it was crazy to see how people, me included, I wasn't able to navigate anymore. Really, I was completely lost in places I used to know by heart how to navigate there. And I think this part of the brain became so rusty. It was really interesting to see. It was like an experiment. It became so
Hmm.
rusty. I wasn't able to navigate anymore, and I used to, right? But I kind of put the navigation part on autopilot. And I think
Interesting.
we can't do that with AI. It will be a dystopia, if we will, letting AI, choose our strategy, our how to act on specific situations. So we must strengthen also our strategic thinking, critical thinking, and connecting the dots, stuff like that.
And I think it gives us more time. I think it gives us more time to do that. And, Shirley, I told you, it's one of the reasons, people ask me, why are you doing a podcast? Why are you doing a podcast? Like because I learn, like you have to take time to learn. And everyone I talk to, I learn like a ton that I'm not going to learn from reading something that AI wrote or just reading in general. That's why I love doing these things. And,
Yeah, like no
I
original thinking in AI. It just replicates the same thing.
Yeah, and I think what it does is it allows us to, like you said, bring nuance to the conversation, nuance to what we're trying to, context to the conversation, and learn, learn throughout, you know, which I love that balance. So takeaway for me is that it's a combination of AI skills, which I love the fact that you're saying don't not learn AI, even though your tool can help you. You can type in a chat bot whatever you're thinking, and it can do it for you. That doesn't mean don't learn it. You should understand what's actually happening as part of it, and at the same time have that human component. And the human component surely leads me to something. I think everyone's a leader. So I'm a huge fan of agency. I have a um, host on another show I do, Just on Bank, who always talks about agency, and it's taken me a while to understand agency
Yeah.
personally, but now I'm a massive fan of it, which is I think everyone's a leader and everyone has to take agency in today's
Mhm.
world. So you as a leader, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place here, but you as a leader, like when you think of leadership in 2025 in 2026, how do you describe it to people? Because every day, like it makes me excited it gives me energy to talk to you, just because you're not just leading a company, you're leading a family, and you're leading in a time when it's a crazy world around the geography that you live in.
I think your presence, like if you're there, if you really listen, and if you're really curious, and if you're really there to your people, and you're not just using fancy words, but actually practicing what you preach. I think it's the greatest form of leadership in today's age, where it's so easy to be distracted and it's so easy to use, you know, this fluff wording. But in the end of the day, what counts is your actions and your presence, and not your words. And I think it's the most important part.
I love that. That's a magical word. It's a magical word, presence. When you think about Dream Team in the future, If you had to describe it in a sentence, what would you want it to look like? You can take more than a sentence, but what do you want it to look like?
Yeah, I'll bargain for more than sentence. And yeah, just a future where every company can work the way they want. So no more the product forces me to do stuff. Every people decision is backed with data. Companies can reinvent themselves 10 times if they must. So adaptability is like a commodity. It's not a nightmare to adapt and
Yeah,
change. And yeah, and in essence, zero admin work for HR, zero admin work for managers, zero admin work for employees, and 100% of the time focused on people's growth, on business impact, on strategy.
love that. That's helpful. I mean, it's one of those things that for me, I think until people reset their brains on what is an HR system or a people operating system, as we've talked about here, they're not going to use it right. And that's the biggest fear as I look at your software and what you guys are doing is that people just do the same thing they've been doing in the past in your tool. And I know that, based on the conversations we've had, that, you know, your goal is not to let that happen. So,
Yeah, and also
congratulations.
let
Sorry, go
everyone,
ahead. No, go ahead.
and also to let every organization do their thing. I don't think that I hold the truth about the future.
To be who they are, not who you are,
Yeah,
right?
to be
To
who
be
they
who they are.
are, chase their own goals in their own style, in their own culture. There isn't a monopole on how the future will look and what's right and what's not. Our biggest thing is to really allow them to do that in the best possible frictionless way they can imagine.
So we're going to put a link to that TED Talk in the show notes. We're going to put a link to you, not to you, but to you, all of your coordinates so people can find Dream Team as well as connect with you on LinkedIn, which I know you're very avid on. But I always like to end with, how do you learn? Like, there was a point in time, and I always tell people I'm very candid about this. I learn from my kids.
Hmm.
Now, your kids are 4 and 2, so it's a little bit different. But I remember learning a lot through my kids' eyes when
Yeah.
they were 4 and 2. But do you have like a YouTube that you watch all the time? Do you have a Substack you read? Do you have a LinkedIn you read? Like, how do you learn and how do you say, wow, I feel satiated that I just learned something to make me a better human?
I do read a lot and listen to podcasts and stuff like that, but honestly, like I learned the most from just doing. In my time in Monday.com, I think I launched, I don't know, 200 features or stuff like that, and managed hundreds of people and teams, and each feature is different and each individual is different and each team is different. And you kind of, when you try and you fail and you succeed and you learn and you get this data point and this data point, you kind of learn, you have this new intuition about how to do things that are based on lots of like real world experience. So um, yeah, I'm all about reading and learning, but for me the best part is actually doing the work and learning.
Getting dirty and actually
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited that we had this conversation.
Me too.
Everyone is cheering. Everyone is cheering for peace. Everyone is cheering for humans. Everyone is cheering for you as a woman founder. I think it's amazing. Everyone is cheering for Dream Team to truly innovate and do things differently. So thank you so much for joining. Love the
Thank
conversation and look forward to many, many more.
thank you, Jason. Bye bye.
Thanks, Shirley. Bye bye. That's a wrap on this episode of Now to Next. Time always goes so fast. I hope today's conversation sparked something new for you, an idea, a question, maybe a shift in how you see the road ahead. If you want to keep pushing from now to next, here's how we stay connected. Subscribe so you never miss the ideas shaping the future. Leave a review. Your feedback helps bring these conversations to even more future-minded leaders. Share this episode. Share with someone who's ready to create change alongside you. Join me beyond the mic. follow me on Substack, a great resource. X at Jason Averbook, and LinkedIn, my name, Jason Averbook, for sneak peeks of upcoming guests as well as behind the scenes insights that I hope help you in your day and your life job. Thanks for listening, and remember, don't just watch the future happen. Step in, shape it, and lead it from now to next.